there has been a lot of talk about Joe Biden's mental state, and this has been a lot of speculation for the most part. I'll admit, there hasn't been a lot of people with expertise showing up to corroborate the claims that Joe Biden has Alzheimer's or some similar degenerative mental disease. However, that is no longer the case, because a former White House doctor, to be fair, a Republican, but a doctor nonetheless, and a White House doctor who also served under Obama, came out recently and has said that Joe Biden is obviously dealing with cognitive decline. And you might say at the outset of this, if you are a Dem partisan or just someone who lacks the mental capabilities, much like Biden, to understand what a mental disease of this sort is, you might say, well, he isn't the doctor of Biden directly. I mean, he doesn't have all of these experience. Also, he's biased against Democrats. He's obviously just saying this is a propagandistic thing. You need more experts and things to show you this, if you're ever going to get them. But I find this argument to be a bit strange, especially considering that I don't see why you'd need expertise to prove what anyone with functioning eyeballs and a prefrontal cortex would be able to tell by just looking at Biden for any period of time. He has had a number of screw-ups over the past few weeks, which have led people to more and more see exactly how detrimental his mental health is to his presidency at this point. You can talk about the at least rumored instances of him farting and doing other more substantive things in his pants on the road, whether to see the Pope or in front of his vice president. You can also talk about plenty of other things in which similar things have happened. Him holding his hands out like this for 30 seconds for no apparent reason. He's done a lot of things to that effect, but some might say that this has no effect on policy, that Joe Biden's basically just a figurehead, that he is not deciding anything. But I'm not so convinced, because there have been a number of examples that have occurred over the past couple of weeks and months that have led me to believe that he may have a bit more of a say in policy matters than we might have originally been led to believe. There has been a number of examples of such, but I think one of the more prominent ones as of recent would be his response to his vax mandate being shot down by the courts within record time. You see, the Fifth Circuit has already knocked down his employer vaccine mandate, mostly because it's completely unconstitutional and has little to no basis in law on any level. It's to the point where, as far as I've seen, the Biden administration hasn't even tried to defend it on any legal basis. All they've said is that it's there to protect people's lives without actually making a constitutional argument as to why they would have the power to do that, even if that was what they were intent to do. In reality, it seems as though this has no legal basis, and yet the response to the Fifth Circuit rightly knocking down this law, or at least temporarily knocking down this law, is the Biden administration coming out and saying, well, we think we're going to win in the end, with no, of course, explanation on how that would occur, and with Biden to come out and say, please, businesses, just impose the vax mandate anyway. Please, while we're having shortages and other problems of that sort, just enforce these mandates, because, that's not going to cause any more economic problems. And this goes further beyond just Biden's statements to these effects, but also to some of his policy, such as the aforementioned vax mandate. That policy, in the middle of a supply chain crisis, which is what it is at this point, and other economic problems which are mounting, just seems insane. It doesn't seem like the actions of someone who is well-equipped to understand what the situation that we're currently in. And that goes beyond just that, and on to gas, because as you may have been noticing, for anyone who has gone outside and had to drive a car for the past few months, the gas prices in most every state in the country is creeping up towards $3.50, $4 or such. Heck, if you're in a dead state or a simply broken down state like California, you're already far past that particular threshold. But Biden has decided that that is not enough because he has come out and tried to stop a second gas pipeline on top of the Keystone XL one that he did right at the beginning of his presidency. Because you know the very sane and not at all demented thing to do in the situation in which gas prices are creeping up towards $4 a gallon is, of course, to close down more gas pipelines and also make sure that in between all of this you're giving lots and lots of gas contracts to Russia and the like, and allowing Chinese investors to buy gas lands and other things of the sort, because that's very intelligent and totally not demented. It's totally not an example of mental decline, and you might say, once again, that, and this is an argument that I'm very sympathetic to, that Biden is just a figurehead. He has no effect on policy, but I find it incredibly hard to believe that anyone who's not demented has decided any of these policy decisions. I mean, maybe they don't have as much of a iron grip on him that we originally thought. Maybe he's just sitting in his Oval Office thinking, of course, that it's the 1970s and looking at the papers on the desk and signing stuff. Just signing things that are on his desk for whatever reason. And these things are just there, and he's like, yeah, this makes sense in the 1970s. We should be doing all of these things. So sign, 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 sign. All without his handlers, of course, being there. They then walk into the room, seeing all this happening, and well, do they go and tell anyone about this? Try and ameliorate the situation in some way? No, instead they try to say that this was what we intended to do all along. You see, economic collapse was exactly our strategy. Now, of course, all of that previously stated is entirely speculation. I don't know what's happening, but honestly, it's just about the only reasonable explanation I can even attempt to come up with for what sort of actions this administration has taken on. I mean, you cannot take an administration which has decided to double down on schooling issues after seeing it tank in the polling for the Virginia election, and saying that administration is sane. You cannot look at their response to the Afghanistan situation and think for even a moment that this administration has any sane minds behind it. I mean, it's really either that or this administration is full of dementia patients, and it's not just Biden himself, but also all of his handlers, which, I don't know, maybe it really is just that insane. And I'm getting to that point where I can't explain this any other way. I don't know what's going on, but it's not going well, suffice it to say, and certainly this needs to be a problem that we all have our minds on. And one of the more important things to do on that is, of course, to organize on a local level. If you're going to prevent some of these economic problems from affecting at least your state or your local community, you have to have people in those communities and local governments, municipalities, and also state governments, which, aren't dementia patients and aren't going to torpedo the economy that's already on the brink of a depression. And so that's what you need to do. You need to organize. You need to start primarying rhinos. You need to make rhinos unelectable. You need to make sure that all of these state governments, local governments are taken over. And taken over from the bottom up. Because then, once there is actually a sane president in office, there will be a much more robust institutional backing for that president. Because if there's a whole bunch of state governments and a whole bunch of local governments that aren't going to go against what any populist president is going to do, you're going to have a much easier time up in the presidency actually doing things. The same goes with the federal Congress and Senate as well. If you have a Senate and Congress filled with rhinos, then you're going to have a whole lot more problems than if it's filled with people who are actually behind the right-wing strategy, and that's actually there to accomplish things and actually solve problems, solve economic problems, solve social problems, all that sort of stuff. That's what you need to do. That's how you need to approach these sorts of issues, and that's where I'm going to leave you guys off. If you enjoyed that video, do subscribe down below, and check me out on other platforms. I'm on BitChute, I'm on Brighteon, I'm on Odyssey, I'm on Rumble, and I'm also on Minds, Gab, and Getter if you want to check out those platforms for some text posts. I'm KelKidman, this has been Breaking on the Daily, and I'm out.